The night in Coruscant seemed ordinary, but within the Jedi Temple, Mace Windu felt a presence he had never experienced. The air became dense, as if invisible layers of time overlapped. He rose from where he meditated, approaching the council chamber, and saw a light emerge in the center, expanding until it took the form of three known figures. They were Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, but not as they existed in the present. They appeared as echoes of the Force, phantoms from a distant destiny, bringing a silence charged with mystery. Mace brought his hand to his saber instinctively. "What does this mean? You shouldn't be here." His voice oscillated between harshness and amazement. Anakin, with a firm countenance, didn't respond immediately. Obi-Wan looked at his former colleague with a serene expression, but laden with weight. "We're not here by choice, Mace. The Force sent us." Yoda, smaller in stature but greater in presence, observed in silence, intrigued by something only he seemed to understand. The ancient master's eyes fixed on the spectral version of himself, and this shook him. The old Yoda took a step back, leaning on his staff. "Strange, this is." The voice carried the strangeness of seeing one's own reflection, not in flesh, but in destiny. Yoda's phantom inclined his head, revering his living version. "The path before you is uncertain, but the Force opens doors that can only be seen if courage you have." The present Yoda closed his eyes for a moment, disturbed by the idea of witnessing what would one day become of himself. Mace Windu broke the silence with coldness. "If this is a trick of the dark side, I need to understand now. Who are you really?" Anakin looked directly at him, his presence radiating regret and determination. "We are not illusions. We're not here to dictate orders nor to reveal what is to come. Only to show that the choices each of you will make will have consequences beyond what you can imagine." With each word, the room seemed to pulse, as if space itself confirmed the weight of his speech. Obi-Wan then intervened. "Nothing is written in stone, Mace. What you decide in this time can change more than a war. It can change the entire essence of the Jedi Order." Windu narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "You speak in riddles. If you cannot tell me what will happen, how do you expect me to trust?" Obi-Wan's phantom approached, almost in a tone of plea. "It's not about trusting us. It's about trusting the Force. It didn't bring us here without a purpose." Yoda, still looking at his spectral version, murmured low, "Strange destiny, a reflection or warning, will it be?" The phantom responded with a calm but firm voice. "Not warning, possibility. The future is not fixed, but mutable." The present Yoda looked at Mace. "Choices, your burden they are. Dictate the path we cannot, but guide, yes." Windu breathed deeply, his mind agitated between skepticism and intuition. There was power in this, but also mystery, and mystery always carried risks. Mace finally turned to the three phantoms. "Then what do you want from us? That we trust in shadows? That I believe you are not just visions created by an enemy?" Anakin's phantom raised his gaze, and his voice was firm. "We want nothing. We just need you to understand. The future is not inevitable. The choices you make now will determine whether the galaxy knows balance or eternal darkness." The words sounded like blades, cutting through Windu's distrust, but leaving him even more restless. At that moment, the room seemed to vibrate with greater energy. Wind crossed through the windows, bringing with it distant echoes of battles that had not yet happened. Obi-Wan raised his gaze to the horizon. "What is to come will require more than sabers. It will require faith in the Force, even when there are no certainties." Mace slowly approached the center of the room, facing each of them. "And if we fail? And if my choices only lead to more destruction?" Yoda's phantom responded, "Fail all can, but courage is to continue, even without guarantees." The living Yoda retreated again, stunned. "My end, see I can. Disturbing it is." The phantom inclined slightly, like one who recognizes pain. "Not end, but transformation. The Force's cycle does not end. It guides." This revelation left the present Yoda in absolute silence, as if the Force showed him not just a shadow, but a promise of continuity. The weight of the vision was almost unbearable, but also brought comfort. Even in death, the struggle would not be lost. Windu looked at the three, clenching his fist. Then the Force places me before something I don't understand, and still expects me to choose. Anakin responded directly, yes, because that's what has always been at stake, our choices, not imposed destiny. The living Jedi looked at the ground, reflecting. Deep down, he knew he was before something greater than any battle. It was the Force itself saying that the future was open. But which path to follow? This answer would not come from the phantoms. The vision began to dissipate, as if the Force had fulfilled its part in bringing the encounter. The three phantoms retreated, their images becoming more translucent. Obi-Wan said the last words before disappearing. The timelines are rivers that change course. What you will do with the current is your decision, Mace. The room returned to silence, only the distant sound of the city echoing. Windu was left alone with Yoda, who still stared at the void where his spectral version had disappeared. A warning, perhaps not, but lesson, yes. In ourselves, trust we must, murmured Yoda, still shaken. Mace responded with a grave voice. Whatever it was, I cannot ignore it. The Force showed too much to be chance. The weight of choices settled like never before. Destiny was not written, but the Force had made clear that the next steps would shape all of history. The future began to lean, and each decision would be the thread that would weave the new timeline. The silence hung over the room after the specter's disappearance. The council masters looked at each other, as if seeking confirmation that all had seen the same thing. Mace Windu was the first to break the tension. All witnessed? It was not just a collective vision, but something greater. The Force spoke to us. His voice carried firmness, but also a shadow of concern. It was difficult to admit that something escaped their control. Ki-Adi-Mundi adjusted himself in his chair, reflecting aloud. If they really were echoes of the Force, then the message was clear. Our practices cannot continue as they are. The Jedi Order is not static, even though we have behaved so for centuries. Some masters murmured in disagreement, but none dared deny that the apparition had weight. What was at stake was not just tradition, but the survival of the Order itself. Plo Koon leaned forward, his mask concealing emotions. They spoke of the Chosen One, of keeping him close. We have always distrusted the prophecy, always feared what Anakin represents. But perhaps this fear is what leads us to fall. The phrase hung in the air, uncomfortable. After all, Anakin already awakened constant discussions within the council, a fragile balance between promise and threat. Mace breathed deeply before responding. Proximity with Anakin can strengthen the bond with the Order, but it can also increase his sense of importance. We cannot allow arrogance to grow in him. Yoda, who remained silent until then, raised his gaze to the group. Fear, guide us we will not. Fear, path to error it is. Distant, the Chosen One must not stay. Close, yes. Guided, he must be. The words resonated with authority, and no one dared interrupt. What if we are deceiving ourselves? Questioned Ki-Adi-Mundi. What if, by bringing him close, we are only accelerating the dark destiny we fear? Yoda responded without hesitation. Fixed destiny does not exist. Choices shape, distance, failure brought before. Now change we must. The clarity in his speech surprised the masters, who rarely saw him speak so directly about the Chosen One. It was as if the encounter with his own specter had reinforced the need to act. Mace Windu crossed his arms, thoughtful. So you propose changing the Order to accommodate Anakin? This is risky. The Senate already sees us with distrust. Any wrong step and we lose what little credibility we still have. Plo Koon responded calmly. Perhaps the greater risk is to continue the same while the world changes. The Republic is at war. The Senate is divided. If we don't adapt the Order, we will be relics of a past that no longer exists. Yoda leaned on his staff, looking at everyone. Change, not betrayal it is. Betrayal, to resist the Force it would be. The Chosen One, trust we must. Close to the Council he must be. Alone, he will lose himself. The words echoed in the room like a hammer striking iron. Some masters nodded discreetly, recognizing that the rigidity they maintained might be blinding them. For the first time, there was an emerging consensus that something needed to change. Mace sighed, partially yielding. Be that as it may, the message was clear. The Force showed us a reflection of what may come. We must not ignore it, but we cannot rush. Anakin's approach must be done carefully. Yoda nodded, agreeing. Care, yes, but trust also. Without trust, the fall will come. It was rare to see Mace and Yoda in harmony, but at that moment both recognized the gravity of the situation. Ki-Adi-Mundi raised his voice again. If we're really going to bring him close, this means rethinking our relationship with the prophecy. Until now, we've treated it as myth or risk. It's time to treat it as a real path. Discomfort spread through the room, but no master disagreed. The weight of what they had seen made it impossible to pretend nothing had happened. The Force had spoken unequivocally. The debate prolonged, but Yoda ended with a phrase that sealed the council's direction. Chosen one, close he will stay. The order, change we must. Rigidity, end it will bring. Balance, only with change will come. His words were received in reverent silence. The oldest among them, now convinced by the reflection of the future, had given the verdict. The council could no longer hide behind unbreakable traditions. When they rose to end the session, each master carried with them the weight of the new decision. Anakin Skywalker would be brought closer, not as a simple Padawan, but as a central piece of the Order's future. They still didn't know how they would do this, nor how far they were willing to go. But one thing was certain: nothing would be as before. The vision had changed everything. The years following the Spectre's apparition were marked by a gradual change within the Jedi Temple. The Council's decision to approach Anakin Skywalker brought not only a new look at the prophecy, but also a process of self-criticism that the Order had not experienced for centuries. Masters like Mace Windu, Plo Koon, and Ki-Adi-Mundi began to observe the young man closely, not with the usual distrust, but with genuine interest in guiding him more closely. This new posture planted seeds of flexibility in an institution accustomed to rigidity. The constant coexistence with the Masters was, at first, a challenge for Anakin. He felt observed, tested at every word and every gesture. However, instead of criticism and severe warnings, he began to find advice and dialogue. Obi-Wan, though still young, perceived the difference in how Anakin was treated and, in silence, thanked the Force for showing the Council another path. This proximity did not eliminate the Chosen One's impulses, but offered him a safe space to confront them. The most striking moment of this new relationship happened when Anakin returned from Tatooine, carrying with him the pain and guilt for his mother's death. Instead of keeping the Tusken massacre secret, he decided to seek out Yoda and Mace Windu to confess. I killed them all, men, women, and children. I couldn't control myself, he said, trembling, expecting punishment. But the response was not what he feared. Yoda simply closed his eyes and responded, "Pain in you, great it is. More than punishment, understanding you need." That changed everything. The Council did not ignore the error, but also did not treat it as reason for expulsion. Plo Koon was the first to comment. He succumbed to anger, but returned seeking light. This is a sign that there is still hope. Mace Windu, normally rigid, surprised by stating, "Perhaps it's exactly this experience that will make him more aware of the dark side's danger." For the first time, the Masters chose to learn from a Padawan's failure, instead of condemning him for it. Anakin felt he was not alone, and that his mistakes could become strength. This new environment allowed Anakin to become more transparent. He began to trust the Council, revealing not only his victories, but also his doubts. Obi-Wan perceived that, contrary to what he feared, the approach did not feed Anakin's arrogance, but softened his rebelliousness. The young man was still impulsive, still irritated by the Senate's political delays and the Council's lack of action, but now there was space for dialogue, and this prevented his frustrations from turning into isolation. With time passing, the Order's flexibility deepened. When Anakin confessed his secret marriage to Padme Amidala, he expected to find rejection. The shadow of expulsion hung over his mind, for he knew the rigid rules against attachment. However, upon revealing the truth before the council, the silence that followed was not of condemnation, but of reflection. Ki-Adi-Mundi commented, "Perhaps it's time to reconsider whether relationship, by itself, is always a weakness." The impact of the phrase reverberated throughout the room. Yoda, after long moments, declared, "Love, risk it brings, but also strength. Guided it must be, not denied." The words surprised even Windu, who had never imagined hearing such a thing from the ancient master. Instead of expelling Anakin, the council decided to embrace the change as part of an evolving order. This decision not only preserved Anakin's bond with the order, but also began a review of the ancient doctrines that had led to so many failures in the past. Anakin, upon hearing the acceptance, felt freed from an immense burden. Padme was no longer just his secret, but a part of his life that could now be recognized without fear. This gesture strengthened his loyalty to the order, for he realized it was no longer necessary to choose between love and duty. He could be husband, father, and Jedi at the same time, as long as he kept the Force's guide. It was at this point that balance began to take shape in his life. The Order, in turn, did not emerge unscathed from this transformation. Many young Padawans began to perceive that the masters were more willing to listen and less inclined to judge. This brought new vitality to the temple, where teachings were transmitted not just as dogmas, but as dialogues. Tradition was still respected, but was no longer a prison. Anakin's example showed that even the Chosen One could err, and that the Force manifested also in the capacity to learn from mistakes. Padme, upon perceiving this change, also felt more secure regarding Anakin's future. Although she didn't participate in the council, she knew that now he had support and no longer carried the weight of secrecy. This network of trust allowed him to become more centered and less vulnerable to external manipulations. Palpatine, who previously found gaps in Anakin's isolation, began to face invisible barriers. The young man was no longer alone to be corrupted. With the passing of years, the Council officially registered these changes as part of the new Jedi philosophy. Attachment ceased to be seen as absolute sin and began to be regarded as responsibility. The fear of falling gave way to the search for balance, and Yoda himself admitted in session, "Dogma, and it brought before. Now, live with balance we must." The Order did not abandon its principles, but made them malleable, capable of adapting to the demands of a galaxy in constant transformation. At the heart of everything was Anakin Skywalker, not as a threat, but as a catalyst. His proximity to the Masters and his sincerity opened doors to changes that would have been unthinkable before. And, ironically, what could have led to the Jedi's destruction became the key to their renewal. The Chosen One was not only guided by the Order, but guided the Order itself toward a new era, where balance was not just prophecy, but daily practice. Padme entered her quarters with a shy smile and revealed to Anakin the news that would forever change his life. She was pregnant. The young Jedi's heart, which had so many times been divided between fear and hope, now pulsed with a joy he couldn't explain. He didn't delay in communicating the news to the Council, which received him in reflective silence. Mace Windu was the first to speak. "A Jedi father. We never thought we would see this, but this is a new order, and perhaps it's what the Force desires." The atmosphere of acceptance made Anakin finally feel like an integral part of the Order. Shortly after, Palpatine called him to his private quarters. With that mellifluous and manipulative tone, he suggested, "Anakin, it's time for you to be on the Council. You have the Senate's respect and the Republic's trust. It would be natural for you to become a master." This time, contrary to the original timeline, when the suggestion was reason for discord, the Council did not resist. In an almost unanimous vote, they consecrated Anakin as the youngest master in the Order's history. Yoda himself declared, "Chosen One he is, ready now he is, guide with balance he can." Despite the honor, Anakin did not find complete peace. Disturbing nightmares began to take over his sleep, showing Padme in suffering and her imminent death. Different from the original path, he did not run to Palpatine seeking answers, but trusted his brother-in-arms and mentor. Obi-Wan, I need to talk. I see Padme dying in my dreams. I don't know if it's just fear or the Force warning me. Obi-Wan, shaken by the confession, promised to help him. We won't ignore this, Anakin. If the Force is showing, it's because there's a reason. Obi-Wan took the matter to the council. Yoda and Mace listened attentively, and both their expressions showed real concern. Yoda commented, "Visions of future they can be. Certain times, warnings they are. Watch he must." Mace completed, "If the Force alerts him, we cannot disregard it. We need to keep him vigilant and prepared. Destiny may be around him, not against." The council agreed to accompany Anakin closely, not as distrustful guardians, but as allies seeking to understand what was to come. Anakin, upon hearing the Master's response, felt comforted. For the first time, he did not carry his fears alone. The nightmares still pursued him, but now there were hands extended to support him. The Order's proximity made his bond with Palpatine not absolute, and although the Chancellor continued with his subtle manipulations, he was unaware of the depth of Anakin's torments. This secret shared only among the Jedi prevented Palpatine from exploiting the Chosen One's weakness. Even with support, tension grew within Anakin. The Senate pressed for quick answers against the Separatists, and Palpatine, in one of his audiences, insisted, "General Grievous needs to be defeated. Only you can lead this attack, my young friend." Anakin took the matter to the council, expecting to hear a negative. To his surprise, Yoda stated, "Ready you are. Victory will bring confidence. Confidence will bring balance." Mace added, "You are master now. We will entrust this mission to you." Thus, contrary to the original path, the decision was clear. Anakin would be sent. The Chosen One departed with determination. The hunt for Grievous led him to the confines of war, where he faced the cyborg general in fierce combat. The duel echoed in each blow, testing not only his skill with the saber, but also his newly acquired discipline. Grievous, with his 4 arms and mechanical movements, pressed Anakin at every instant, but the Jedi breathed deeply, remembering Obi-Wan and Yoda's words. He was not alone in that battle. He carried with him the Council's trust. When the final blow was struck and Grievous fell destroyed, the arena's silence was replaced by a wave of victory. Anakin rose not just as a warrior, but as a leader. His confidence grew, but this time it was not arrogance, but security. He knew he had honored the Order, and knew the Council believed in him. The clones under his command saluted the victory, and even the most skeptical among the Jedi recognized that the Chosen One fulfilled the role for which he had been called. Back in Coruscant, the Council received Anakin in session. Plo Koon said in grave tone, "You defeated an enemy that defied the entire Republic. Today, the Jedi Order strengthens through you." Yoda completed, "Victory, yes, but vigilant still you must be. Fears do not disappear with victories." Mace looked at the young master and said, "Remember, Anakin, balance is not only in defeating enemies, but in staying firm before yourself." The words were warnings, but also recognition. Padme received Anakin at home with tears of joy. "You are stronger, Anakin. I see it in your eyes. Not just strength, but peace." He embraced her, feeling that, despite the nightmares, he was no longer at destiny's mercy alone. "I have you and I have the Order. Nothing will bring us down." The confidence in his voice revealed how much he had changed. For the first time, he saw a possible future where family and duty need not be enemies. Meanwhile, Palpatine observed from afar, disturbed. Anakin's victory over Grievous had been a triumph for the Republic, but also a seed of independence from the Council. The Chancellor perceived that the bond between the Chosen One and the Masters was stronger than expected. Even so, his manipulation did not cease. He knew fear was a powerful weapon, and that nightmares could be the breach to corrupt Anakin, if he was patient enough. The Council, attentive, left no easy gaps. Gathered in session after Anakin's return, they discussed the implications. Mundi commented, "He is stronger, but his dreams continue to disturb him. We cannot ignore. Yoda concluded with serenity. Difficult path still, but together face we must. The chosen one, never alone will stay. This pact of proximity kept Anakin at the Order's heart, where his fears were shared and his victories celebrated. The galaxy still burned in war, but the flame of hope burned more intense than ever. Years of manipulation culminated in the moment when Palpatine called Anakin for a reserved conversation in his quarters. The Chancellor's tone was loaded with confidence, as if he knew he was about to definitively conquer the young Jedi's heart. "Anakin," he said with soft voice, "you are stronger than all of them, but you still don't know your full potential. There are powers beyond what the Jedi dare to teach. If you consider learning the dark side, you can save those you love and become the most powerful of all." The words, sweet as poison, echoed through the chosen one's mind. But Anakin was no longer the same insecure young man from before. Upon hearing that proposal, he felt the pieces fit together in his mind. The nightmares, the distrust, the aura of mystery that surrounded Palpatine. Everything converged to an inevitable revelation. He narrowed his eyes, his hand sliding to his saber. "You are the Sith we've been looking for all this time." The Chancellor's smile dissolved, replaced by a look of fury. "Finally, you see. But now it's too late." Both rose and the duel began. The blades collided with overwhelming fury, illuminating the hall with blue and red sparks. Palpatine fought with cunning, each blow loaded with hatred and power. Anakin, however, was centered. He did not fight for ambition or fear, but for the Order, for Padme and for the children who were on the way. Each of his movements reflected not only strength but balance. The sound of sabers echoed through the walls, like a chant of the Force deciding who would be the galaxy's true heir. The combat reached its peak when, in a clash of blades, both were disarmed. The sabers flew to opposite sides of the room, leaving them face to face with only their own will. Palpatine raised his hands, releasing a torrent of dark energy rays. The thunder of darkness launched itself against Anakin, who for a moment was taken by the instinct to retreat. But then something within him ignited. The Force flowed through his hands, guiding him to face the attack without fear. The rays hit Anakin, but instead of consuming him, they were contained by his own raised hands. Energy hissed, surrounding him, but gradually began to return against the very emitter. Palpatine's gaze contorted with disbelief. "No, this is not possible." Anakin advanced step by step, maintaining pressure. "Your time is over. The Force does not belong to darkness." The rays turned against the Sith, who was being electrocuted by his own energy. Palpatine's scream echoed until it was silenced forever. When the Chancellor's body fell, the room plunged into silence. Anakin breathed with difficulty, still with hands raised, feeling the Force calm within him. He had not just defeated an enemy. He had defeated himself, his fears, and his temptations. Shortly after, the Senate was informed. Before everyone, the young master was proclaimed hero. Jedi Anakin Skywalker discovered, faced, and eliminated the Sith Lord who corrupted the Republic. Thanks to him, we are free. Applause echoed throughout Coruscant. The Jedi Council also recognized the feat not just as a military victory, but as the fulfillment of the prophecy. Mace Windu declared in assembly, "He brought balance, not by destroying the Jedi or subjugating the Senate, but by facing the dark side and defeating it within himself." Yoda completed, "Chosen one, truly he is. Prophecy, fulfilled it was." Obi-Wan's silent pride mixed with joy at seeing his former Padawan achieve what seemed impossible. The Order not only survived, but was reborn. Padme, who closely followed each step of this journey, lived to see the fruit of her union with Anakin flourish in peace. Her health remained firm, and when the time came, she gave birth to healthy twins. Anakin was by her side, not as a shadow divided between duty and secrecy, but as father and protector. "Luke, Leia," he murmured while holding his children in his arms. The Force seemed to envelop him in fullness, as if confirming that the future was finally safe. The following years brought peace to the galaxy. The Republic, freed from Sith manipulation, began a reconstruction process with the support of the Jedi Order, now more flexible and close to the people. Anakin, as the youngest master in history, became a symbol of renewal, not only for his strength, but for the courage to share his pains, his failures, and his victories. He showed that balance was not in perfection, but in accepting humanity within the Jedi.